All right, welcome everyone. We are on the last of our factoring notes podcast, and so this one in particular is called factoring trinomials. And this is on your sheet. It talks about three terms where the leading coefficient is 1, and then three terms where the leading coefficient does not equal 1. So let's just jump right into that, and we're going to just call this factoring trinomials. This should be a review for most of you because this is covered in Algebra 1. So we're just going to do a few of these examples. So we're going to start with example 1, and we are going to factor x squared plus 12x plus 20. All right. One of the things that I've noticed that a lot of students don't remember or maybe aren't taught is the fact that what these mean. And so when you have ax squared plus bx plus c, this sign right here, the one on the right, and if you saw the Teach Me How to Factor video that I showed you, you'll know that they reference this one. You're checking here to see what are the signs, and if it's a plus, it means that the two parentheses share the same sign. And if it's a minus, they have different signs. And that'll make more sense once you see it. And then what the middle one tells you is, what are they? Okay, so let's just jump right in. So when you look at this one, you see this plus sign. That tells me that the signs are the same. Since I know they're the same, this tells me what they are. So I know that when I factor this trinomial, I'm going to factor it into x and x because that's what x squared factors into. They're the same, which means they're both positive, so I'm going to put a plus here. And then here I need factors of 20. When they're the same, you're looking for factors of that n number that add to get the middle number. And so this is something I usually do, is where I list the factors, and that makes it much easier. So when I look at the set of factors, which set can I add together to get 12? Well, it's 2 and 10. Doesn't matter where you place it because they're both positive, and this is factored. It's done. Now, it's also the same way if you factor one that has a minus in both of them, but the signs are the same. So let's do one of those. Or, sorry. So let's factor x squared minus 5x plus 4. Again, we're going to factor. The signs are the same and they're both minus. So we're going to x minus and then an x minus. Most of you probably remember this from Algebra 1 because this was the easy one. Okay, so I looked at my set of factors. Sorry, that's a comma. I look at my set of factors, and which set add to get 5? Well, it's 1 and 4. So there's 1 and there's 4. You have now factored a trinomial. Now, the next step we want to move on to is what happens when the signs are different. And this is the one that makes it a little more complicated for most students. And so let's jump to the next slide and let's do example 3. So we want to factor, and again, keep in mind we're still doing these where the coefficient of x squared is still 1. So it's not a big deal. So now we're going to factor x squared plus 4x minus 12. Well, now that this is a minus, I know that each parentheses, one gets a plus and one gets a minus. So again, I am going to have parentheses, and I'm going to list my factors because that is going to really help here. Now, because this is a minus, when it was a plus, we would add to get the middle term. Now that it's a minus, we're going to subtract to get the middle term. So you're looking for the set of factors that have a difference of 4. That's going to be 2 and 6. Now, there's nothing special about this. Sometimes I place my factors first. Sometimes I place my signs first. Doesn't really matter. You just have to make sure that they're correct. But I'm going to go ahead and place the x in the x. And then I'm going to go ahead and place the 2 in the 6. Now, keep in mind, I need to get a positive 4. So that means that the plus sign needs to go in front of the bigger number or bigger product. In this case, that's 6. So I'm going to put the plus here and the minus here. Now, if you want to check this, and I'm going to put that there, you multiply these two, and then you multiply these two. So when you multiply that, you get a negative 2x. If you multiply those two, you get a positive 6x. The difference being a positive 4x. That's how I know this is correct. The other thing you can check is do the rectangular box. We talked about this. And this is where you would do x minus 2 and then x plus 6 and multiply it out and see if it works out to what you started off with. If it doesn't, then you know you've done something wrong. So let's do another one with the difference where the signs are different. Okay, so example 4, I'm going to change this back to black. and we are going to factor. I'm going to do m squared minus 2m minus 8. All right. I'm going to factor this into m and m. So we have 1 and 8, and we have 2 and 4, and there's all of our factors. Now keep in mind this is a minus sign, so I need to subtract the factors to get 2. The only factors that have a difference of 2 are 2 and 4. So I'm going to go ahead and place 2 and 4. Now as far as placing the sign, the minus here needs to go in front of the bigger number or bigger product. In this case, it's going in front of the 4, and the plus is going with that one. So now that's factored. Now, one of the things you need to keep in mind is that sometimes you can factor out a common factor or a greatest common factor before you factor this way, and then that just makes the number smaller. So let's go to a different one, and I think this should be example 5. And we are going to have, let's erase that. So we are going to factor 2x squared minus 20x minus 48. And notice that they all share a 2. So I'm going to take a 2 out. You want to factor, not divide, because you don't want to lose the factor, because sometimes it's got a variable in it, and that does matter when you get further up into the class. So when we factor out a 2, we're going to end up with x squared minus 10x minus 24. Now I'm going to keep carrying the 2 because it is part of the problem. So we're going to have x and x. Now I need factors of 24, 3 and 8 and 4 and 6. So I need factors of 24 that have a difference of 10. And that's going to be this set right here. So there's my 2, there's my 12. And then where should the minus be? In front of the 12. And that one is factored. Okay, but notice I factored out a common factor first. Now, what I'd like to do is the other part of this, where now let's factor some where you have a number in front of x squared as well as a number at the other end. So you have 2 set of factors you have to worry about. And this is what we reference when we say the leading coefficient is not 1. Okay, so you just have to pay attention. And so let's start with 4x squared plus x minus 3. So now I'm going to still have 2 parentheses. My signs are different. So I know one's a plus, one's a minus. But now I have factors of 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. And then over here I have 1 and 3. Now notice the 1 and 3 are the 3 is a prime number. So I would place it first, just because there's not any more choices there. So now you have to decide whether I'm going to use the 1 and the 4 or the 2 and the 2. Sometimes it's just trial and error. You try a set of factors, it doesn't work. You switch them if they're not the same, doesn't work. Then you try the next set. Don't just immediately give up. But looking at this, I'm going to go ahead and do 1 and 4. So I'm going to do 1x and I'm going to do 4x. Okay? Now when I do that, I get a 4x here, I get a 3x there. Difference of 4 and 3 is 1. And so I need a plus, so I'm going to have a plus 1 and a minus 3. And I factored. And I know this works because this is a positive 4x, this is a minus 3x. That's going to give me a positive 1x, which is what I'm looking for. Okay? Let's try another one. And again, you're still going to run into the same thing here where you can sometimes factor out a common factor before you start. Because remember, this only works if you have quadratics. So if it's cubic, you might have to factor out a variable, or if it's raised to the 5th power, whatever. Alright, so let's do another slide. Let's do example 7, and we are going to factor. We're going to do 2x squared minus 3x minus 9. So here I have a 1 and a 2, and here I have a 1 and a 9, and I have a, whoops, sorry, not a 2, but I have a 3 and a 3. And so my parentheses here, signs are different, so I'm going to go ahead and place my 1x and my 2x. I don't normally write the 1, but if you do, that's fine. And then I need a difference of 3. Well, I don't think I'm going to get that with 1 and 9, because the difference between 9 and 2 is only 7, and I need 3, so that's too much. So I'm going to place 3 and 3. That's another way to kind of decide which factors are you placing. Look at the numbers, and if they don't have that as a possibility, then maybe you can move on. And sometimes this really is just trial and error, guess and check. So here I have a 6x, and here I have a 3x, which is a difference of 3. I need to get a negative, so I'm going to put a minus here and a plus here. And again, you can multiply these factors in order to see if it works, because you should get this problem back. And if you don't, you know you've done something wrong. All right. Again, this was part of Algebra 1, so mostly this should be review. So I am going to go ahead, and then please feel free to ask questions in class. But we are done with this one. Thank you.